It was the last day for Wes and Jack's visit, so we'll take a look at what got done and what's coming up for planking. And then we'll catch up on all the work Alix has done on the mizzen mast, and he'll shape the bottom section that will go inside the boat. And on a housekeeping note, if you're a current or potential Patreon supporter, we've moved to a monthly subscription model. There's some new bonus content that you might be missing out on, so make sure you check out our Patreon page at some point to see those changes, and check out the new live Q&As that are coming out of the boathouse. Information on all that is in the description below.
About 6 inches one side. Come on. And good.
It's been a busy couple weeks. Jack came down from Maine for 2 weeks, Wes came up from Tennessee for a week, and Carolyn's been in and out helping out for about a month now. And in the 2 week time that Jack, Wes, and Carolyn were all here together, we managed to get essentially 6 planks onto the boat. So that is a plank goes from stem to stern, fit at the rabbets at both ends, and represents a decent amount of work. So that worked out to 3 planks a week that we could get on the boat, which is about maybe a little bit faster than what Aaron and I were doing last summer right before we ran out of dry oak. So it's good to know that even with a few experienced planking hands on deck, we're not going terribly faster than we were. It's just a slow process getting these full-length oak planks fit onto a double-ended hull where you've got to get them tucked into the rabbets at the stem and stern. But we made a lot of progress. I was really hoping to be able to fill in all the oaks, but there's just no way. I was shooting for the stars, but as the saying goes, we did reach the moon. We got a lot done. So next up is to fasten the stem and stern ends of these last 2 planks on the port side. We didn't quite get to that, but all of midship is done, so that's not too terribly difficult. And we've got to make up 4 more sets of bilge stringers, 2 per side, and get those installed, and that'll take care of the rest of the steel bolts, which would be amazing to see those totally gone. And we've got the 2 oaks to fit each side. So I think we can make the next round right off the pattern. It seems to have come out really well in terms of widths. And then we'll have to pull some real careful measurements and do some shutter planks, which will be oak between oak. I think should be interesting, kind of getting those knocked in there. We've never done a shutter plank before. And when those are in, we've got just a couple planks either side up by the shear to do, and Arabella will be planked. It's been a long time coming. But part of that was just waiting for this oak to dry. That took up a good part of the last year. In that time, we got all the deck structure built and the rest of the frames and the bronze floors and dropped the diesel in. And so the time wasn't wasted, but it just feels like such a long time for the planking. But we are getting there. So I'm going to go disappear for 2 days. I haven't had a day off in about a month, and I'm getting a little punchy, as we used to say when you'd go plowing for 24 hours or so. So I could use a little bit of time, but Alix is going to keep chugging on the mizzen mast. He's getting really close to done with that. And Carolyn's also taking a couple days off, and then we're going to come back and dive into bilge stringer land and get these last oak planks in.
Over the course of shaping the mast, a few sections showed up that needed some graving pieces, like this sideways knot here. And Alix took a couple of different approaches using material that he cut off the top during tapering.
So that graving piece where that sideways knot was has come out real nice. I haven't shaved it down yet. We're going to let it sit for a little bit longer. Make sure that epoxy is completely cured, but right now I've got 2 more spots that I need to take a look at, and we're going to do a little bit different technique on how to fix those. So one of them is this spot right here where the bit slipped with the router. And instead of making one piece and tapering it in, which is going to be kind of challenging, it would make us remove a little bit more wood in here. It doesn't make more sense to take more wood out. So instead we're going to make a little dish out of here, and we're going to laminate in some strips. And this spot right here is another one. They had, I believe, the bell put in here, and there's a bunch of screw holes, and you can see there's a little bit of rot starting, so there's some dark spots in here that we want to take out. And Bud McIntosh talks about this in his book and how to do this, and being another way to do a graving piece. So you just laminate some strips on top of each other, press them into the epoxy, and then you can just shave them down. And then you have longitudinal grain running with it as well.
With the mast now shaped, it was time for Alix to move on to sanding the mast. But he was still trying to work out the best way to do that. You might remember this clip from a few weeks ago.
I'm seeing the building down.
What happens if you just let it go?
It's like hard to control.
Yeah.
Building apart.
So the next plan was to make a drum that would turn a circular sanding strip, but that wasn't working too well either.
And the sanding jig that I made, that sanding drum, actually works. But as I was working on the top of the mast up there, it was working well enough, but one, it was really tiring to hold and to keep the pressure on the trigger accurately. And the other thing is it would jump the belt. Even with the sides that I put on there, they're just a little bit too short. They were just circles that we already had cut out, so I figured I would use them. And what ended up happening is when the belt would jump, it would curl one of the corners, and that would make a hard spot, and it would start to dig into the mast. So if it's gonna start doing that, it's not really worth using. So I decided to take the belts apart, and using these two sticks, I can hold each side, and it's not too much work to put them on here and just pull back and forth. It's a little rough on the hands, losing a little bit of skin, but going pretty quickly. At this point, this is, 120 grit, and I've done about 2/3 of the mast already. So with the really rough spots where there's a lot of ridges and bumps and stuff, I'll start with the 80 grit, and then I will jump back up to the 120, and that seems to be working really, really, really well. Makes a lot of dust, so I've been wearing the dust mask on, which has caught a lot. But basically I just feel like the Karate Kid, just going back and forth. But it's pretty good. It's nice to see that this is getting smooth and working really well. I'm gonna do basically all of this, and then not really worry too much about the very bottom of the mast, because I'm gonna move on to tapering that. So below decks, the mast actually tapers as well, just like it would up at the top, but we're not gonna put entasis in it. It doesn't need any visual effect like that for below decks. Basically what we're trying to do is take some of that meat away so that we have more space in between the mast and the engine, so that we can work on it when we need to. And a lot of people that we've talked to have said that this is very, very common, that you don't really need the meat down there. There's no fulcrum point because it is blocked in the mast step at the bottom and blocked at the partner, so that doesn't move as long as they are locked in. So we're gonna taper it down a little bit from below decks and then have a smaller diameter all the way down to the bottom to a square tenon that's gonna sit in the mast step. It will fit squarely in a step, and the square will keep the mast from rotating if there are ever any rotational forces on there. And this will also make it so that we have an inch on each side less of material, and that gives us more room in front of the engine, which is really typical down below. Gotta be some of the most stressful cuts I have ever made. But looks pretty good. It's a good square. We've got all of our corners marked. And now I just need to take a saw and just kerf from this edge to this corner, and that'll give me the flats that I need to cut down to. Unfortunately, we had loaned out the beam saw, so I couldn't get all the way through here. But this will be enough, and I don't even know if the beam saw would have made it all the way through with how high I was off of this. But I needed something stable to sit on top so that I could ride on it without it deflecting. I've got it reduced down to a 4x4 inch square that's going down to the bottom. But now what I need to do is make a transition here from the round to the square, and then off the square, we're gonna make that into an octagon by taking off the corners. But I wanna see what the transition is gonna look like and kind of start working it all together to make it look as best as possible. And then I'm gonna try to decide whether I want the octagon to be to have all equal sides, equilateral. But looking at it, I might want to just do some smaller chamfers just off the corners and leave a little bit more meat in there. But I just want to see what that looks like. So right now I'm going to mark out where my transition section is going to be. Because right in here, so this is going to be the top of the deck. This is the bottom of the deck beams. And in this area here, we're gonna have a support. And this is basically going to keep the mast at the deck level from moving anywhere. So it's gonna be supported here, and it's gonna be supported down at the base. But basically we want this to stay the 6-inch diameter with a little bit more wiggle room in here. And then I'm gonna make a transition, tapering that down to the shape that we have here. So I'm gonna start marking things out. It's a lot that goes into shaping a mast, and it's been really fun being able to learn stuff on this one. And even though this is going to be very different than the main mast construction, there's a lot of skills in this that are really nice to be able to get, and having a really nice Mizzen Mast is going to make a really big difference. It'll be nice to know that that stick is good. So it's been really fun to be able to have the leeway to do this. And honestly, working on the rig right now doesn't take away from any of the other work, because I am doing this in between bouncing around filming and catching them doing other things. So Steve and Carolyn and everybody else that was here earlier were focusing on doing the planking, which with the amount of space that we have in the boathouse, it can be pretty challenging to have too many crews working at the same time. So it didn't really make sense for me to lead another crew doing the other side of the boat. They were already kind of working on both sides. But it's great to be able to film, and then when I've got enough footage of certain things or there's downtime, I can hop on this and spend a couple hours doing this. Doing this has uncovered some things that make me think about repairs a little bit differently. It's interesting to see how things are after you shave them down. For example, these are the little bungs that I put in earlier, and I'm seeing that some of them, like this one mostly, there's just a little spot that it wasn't wide enough or wider than the hole, so it didn't compress in there. And all of these still have a bunch of dark wood around them. This is all solid, so this doesn't look any like rot or anything, but it's interesting to see that it goes down that deep. The big ones are like these holes right here. When I was working on this before and it was just the round mast, this hole right here was plugged and looked good. Had a bunch of epoxy in there. And as I've been shaving this thing down, the plug fell out, and it's amazing to see how deep that actually goes, and there was nothing in there. All of that was just open in there, so that's crazy. That's that deep of a hole that had nothing in it. There's nothing wrong with it right now, and it would be fine even if we left it like that, but it would be good to ream that out and put a dowel in there and plug that up.
The lines look really cool. I think they look great.
See how they finish out.
No, I think it's gonna be a really nice transition, and like the lamb's tongues you've got in here and those angles, it's gonna look really nice.
It's a little nerve-wracking.
Strong enough?
Yeah, exactly. Right?
Everyone's gonna have concerns about it being strong enough.
I mean, it's like the tight grain 100-year-old fur in compression, which is what it likes to do.
It's true.
I think it's fine.
Yeah, this is just a compression post, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about how there's the catch right there that'll hold it at the deck.
Right. Plus, like,
It's just going to be that section.
Yeah.
and that's all.
And this is
intention.
typical, too.
It's kind of an example as if, her perfect hole here.
Yeah, right.
Nice.
If this is our spar, and we don't do anything to it, it'll just go wherever it wants. But you put the stays on it, and they fix the end of it,
Right.
and they hold it in compression, and then this can move. And if somebody wants to pinch it here,
Yeah, you had that.
so
one.
that is your partners at the deck, and that's your mast step. And if you don't move,
Yeah,
Which is
this
hard.
which is hard.
challenging.
I have a lot of leverage in you. This won't move.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's going to be the same thing with the mast. It'll bend between the partners and the hounds, but it won't bend between the partners and the
No.
step. If it does, something horrifically horrible has already transpired.
I mean, it's pretty common to change like shape as you go into the boat.
Oh
It's
yeah,
very common.
round to square,
Yeah,
round
this is
top
going to save
tagging
us a ton of room in front of the engine, too.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
which
mean,
will be
maybe
nice.
not a ton, but like this is plenty. This is a hand's width at least.
Yeah, that's one more screw you can get to with the screwdriver.
Yeah, exactly.
But like the other thing that like you guys are working with is the fact that you have a really low aspect rig.
Yeah.
You have a really low aspect
It's
rig.
not a big stick.
You don't have a huge stick, like, and it's a gaff, so you're not dealing with crazy twisting forces. It's the Mizzen, like,
Yeah,
it's gonna be perfect. So
cool.
nice,
Get to it.
All right.
nice. You can do
More
it.
shaping, more weird shaping.
It's all weird shaping. It's the boat.
That's both
It's a
building.
boat.
It's weird shaping.
It's all weird.
How's it going?
He's going good. It's looking all right. No sharp edges. I mean, just gonna leave like these kinds of things.
Sure, yeah.
Look all right.
I would say any plugs that don't seem.
Good. Just drill them back out. Put new ones
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
Which, I don't know, that's kind of like borderline.
Yeah.
We can probably fill that up with some varnish. That we should probably just drill, I mean, just a little bit. Just put a little plug in. That one I'd probably leave. That I'd leave.
Oh, you'd leave that one?
Oh, maybe not. Maybe take one of the little picks
Yeah.
and get in there, but I also don't know. That goes, I think, all the way through to here.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to drill out in one place.
Can I not just drill out to the middle?
Might be able to. That's what I'm saying. Maybe grab one of the thin picks and just see how deep it goes. And if like the pick bottoms out and it's a half an inch deep, then yeah, maybe drill down and fill, or maybe fill it with epoxy. The only thing is this is gonna be varnished. So anything that you fill with epoxy is gonna like.
Next week, it's back to planking as Steve and Carolyn close in on the shutter. And soon, Alix will finish up all the hard work on the mast with coats of varnish and paint. Just a reminder to check out the Patreon page for our new monthly subscription model, along with a few new perks to go along with all the support your contributions make toward this project. Thanks for watching, and see you again next week.